What's up, guys? Boy, I'm from FoxCast here. Welcome to an all-new episode of FoxCast Creepypasta, where today we are going to be reading What Lies Beneath Disney World by Davia84. Now, this is a pretty interesting creepypasta. I found it while searching here, and it seems pretty good, so might as well give it a try. So without further ado, let's get right into this, shall we? Let's go! What Lies Beneath Disney World by Davia84. I don't know how much time I have left, so I want to get this story out before they find me. You can only hide from a corporation with the resources like Disney for so long. They're closing in on me as we speak. Let's start at the beginning. A year ago, when my wife and I were planning to take our two daughters to Disney World. Frankly, Disney isn't my theme. I'd much rather be riding around on roller coasters that fling you around at 98 miles per hour than the little boats that take you through a scenic ride through a cartoon that I've been forced to watch about 10,000 times. To be honest, the most interesting thing about Disney World, aside from partaking in beer around the world, to me were the underground tunnels that, as a lot of people know, the park staff and characters use to move around without being seen by guests. They actually have hidden entrances all over the park, so when I saw the option to tour these tunnels, $75 seemed like a small price to pay to get me out of a few hours of meeting princesses. I booked the tour, my wife and daughters weren't interested, and the girls were too young anyway, so I was the only one taking the tour. I was expecting a few hours of pleasant, child-free bliss in the air-conditioned tunnels, and maybe some interesting information that makes the park itself a little more entertaining for me. If only I had known what waited for me in those tunnels, I would have never signed up for that tour. And I never would have taken my family to that godforsaken park at all. Our trip up to the day of the tour was actually pretty enjoyable overall. Despite myself, thanks to girls having so much fun with the excited glow in their eyes that only children could get, I've ended up having a good time. I of course roll my eyes a few times at some of the more over-the-top stuff, but overall I did have fun. I even let myself get sucked into it. They're insanely good at doing that to you. The one thing that absolutely none of us enjoyed was the Small World ride. I've been on it before, years ago, and I remembered hating it. In fact, no one I know who has ever ridden it liked it. Even Disney themselves make fun of the ride in a few of their movies. The girls really wanted to get on it, and the line was fairly short compared to the other ridiculous ones, so we ended up conceding. Even my daughters were begging to get off by the end, though. Maybe it's because of the incessant one-verse song that plays throughout the entire ride. Maybe it's the fact that the ride was nearly endless, and maybe it was because of the hordes of creepy animatronic children that populate the whole thing. But, we all hated it. I had no idea why this ride has been in operation for so many years, as horrible as it was. I know the heinous secrets behind it now, of course, but we'll get to that shortly. Anyway, the fateful day of the tour arrived, and we got to the park early that day. My wife and kids went off in their way, excited for another day of fun, and I went off to take the tour that would bring my world to an end. The tour was interesting at first. We heard some history about the park, Disney himself, got to see a few of the characters getting ready, etc. But by my second hour, I was bored. The tunnels really weren't as fascinating as I had made them out to be in my mind. And I really just felt like I was backstage at a big show. And the walking was insane. My feet were sore already, and it wasn't even close to lunchtime. It was at this point that I noticed a door that caught my eye. It wasn't really anything fascinating at first glance. It was simply marked storage. However, it was slightly ajar, and despite being dark inside, I could tell it was not a storage closet. It actually looked like what I was hoping the tunnels would be. It reminded me of an old military bunker, with thick concrete walls, and I could see a set of steep, narrow metal stairs going down quite a distance. Now this was interesting. I don't really know what made me defy all common sense, or why it was I found so intriguing about this door or those stairs, but I knew I had to go down there. So I did that exact thing all idiots in cliché horror movies do. I dropped back from the group, and when nobody was looking, I ducked inside. The stairs were rickety old metal, but that didn't seem to be in danger of giving way. So, I carefully crept down into the darkness. I could see a room at the bottom, and there was faint light coming from it. When I finally reached the room, I realized I must be in some kind of maintenance area for the Small World ride. It was a cavernous room, with the ceiling high above, and I could see a lot of broken-looking scenery that looked like it fit with the ride, and a few scattered parts here and there. At this point, I realized I might actually be under the ride, because there was water seeping down through the ceiling and dripping down. At this point, I was a little nervous, but it was just a feeling that I was somewhere I was not supposed to be. I figured that the worst thing that would happen to me is that I would get kicked out of the park and have to spend the rest of the day relaxing at the hotel instead of walking and standing in lines. I couldn't have been more wrong. As I continued, I found another side room. This one was the first sign that something more sinister was going on. The door itself was fairly nondescript, not even a label. But what really caught my attention was a set of scratch marks on the edge of it. They looked like they were made by human fingernails, almost as if someone had grabbed the door in a struggle to keep from being pulled into that room. Upon entering the room, I realized it was a storage and preparation room for the animatronic children on the ride. There were rows of clothing stacked neatly onto shelves. Moving beyond these, though, there were piles of clothes that didn't really fit the theme of the ride. It looked almost like a lost and found. There were kids' t-shirts, shorts, and other clothes just haphazardly tossed into piles without much sorting. There was even a pile of those rubber wristbands that everyone wears for the Fast Pass thing. It definitely did not seem to be props for the ride. I wonder if maybe they were in the process of updating the ride and were using old lost and found items or something. The next area I moved on to actually had some of the dolls in it. A few of them were broken down, missing limbs, cracks, chips, paint, etc. Then I moved into what looked like a painting area. There were stains on the floor, and several of the dolls were hanging upside down on some kind of drying rack. At this point, the nervousness I had been feeling slowly turned into pure horror. One of the dolls began struggling and whimpering. Help me. Ugh. I realized in an instant that those stains on the floor were not paint, and neither was the liquid dripping from the children on the rack. I reeled with an absolutely horrific sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. But somehow, I managed to keep it together. And I went to the child, trying to find a way to get him down. At this point, I was struggling to get the kid off the rack. I heard a voice from behind me that made my blood run cold.
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
The only way I could describe this voice is that it was a perfect Mickey Mouse imitation. If Mickey had been 6'5", 300 pounds, and a chain smoker since the last 85 plus years he was first drawn, it was deep, gravelly, and absolutely terrifying. The last was the most disturbing version of a Mickey Mouse laugh I had ever heard in my life. The laugh alone was enough to turn my blood into ice water. I turned to see a man in a Mickey Mouse suit flanked by about 20 big guys in black polo shirts and khakis. They were clearly not normal Disney security because they all had the build of NFL players and the demeanor of Special Forces soldiers. Every one of them had a pistol holstered in their belt, which I know is not standard issue for park security. Mickey himself was the most terrifying thing, though. It wasn't the normal suit you would see around every corner in the park. Oh no. This one looked like it was the original suit from the time the park first opened in California in 1955. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of the original Mickey Mouse mascots, but they're horrifying. Google it if you want to see what I'm talking about. The eyes are wide and unnatural, and this one looked like it had been washed in the last 60 years. It was dirty, stained, and ragged. Again, the demonic imitation Mickey voice.
You just couldn't enjoy the park and stay where you belonged, could you? You just had to poke around the park where you shouldn't be. Had to find out what we do with the naughty kids, huh? Well, you're coming with us now. You're too big to fit on this ride, but I'm sure you can find some place to put you.
The men in polo shirts started to flank me, and I knew I was doomed. My only way out was through that demon mouse, so I did the only thing I could, and I charged him. I was a defensive lineman in high school, so I am no stranger to the feeling of slamming into another person while running at full speed. I fully expected the contact, but when I hit that mouse suit, it was like running into an old teddy bear that had been sitting on this shelf for decades. It just gave way, and almost felt like it disintegrated cloud of dust that exploded all around me. I contacted something light and brittle at the center, heard a snapping sound like old dry twigs, and then the mouse collapsed. I nearly fell on my face from my own momentum because I was expecting a lot more resistance. As I recovered to my feet and kept running, I heard the same crackling noise, and looked over my shoulder. Mickey was on the ground, limbs bent at awkward angles, but his body was popping itself back together as he rose up from the floor. It was a horribly disturbing sight, and I turned away and continued running as hard as I could go. I had to get out of there. I had to get back to the park, to the crowds. I knew they would never do anything in front of the guests to break the magic. It's pretty much their number one rule. I could hear the security guys coming after me, but there's nothing quite like a combination of adrenaline and fear for your life that gives you speed. There's not a person alive who could have outrun me at that moment. I made it out of that room, up to the stairs, and into the tunnels in about 5 seconds flat. I exploded through the nearest exit door and nearly gave some poor family a heart attack when I flew out behind the bushes that were hiding the entrance right in front of them. Deciding that my best bet was to blend with the crowd as much as possible, I slowed down and tried to stick to the middle of the most congested areas while I bought some time to text my wife and get her and my kids out of there. I never received a reply. After a couple of hours looking for them, I was beginning to see black polo shirts everywhere, and I decided I needed to leave the park. They were probably a lot safer without me anyways. I wasn't going to be around to meet them up later if I didn't make my escape soon. God help me. I thought they'd be left alone if I wasn't with them. I exited the park with a much larger tour group, so I was less likely to be noticed. I knew better than to go back to our Disney hotel or take any of the Disney standard transportation, so I went ahead and followed the group to their big charter bus, and managed to sneak on board. Luckily, they all seemed pretty worn out, and nobody seemed to care, really, that I was part of the group. Eventually, I ended up in a bar in downtown Orlando, still trying to contact my family. Finally, I received a reply. It was a picture of my wife and daughter smiling, huge forced smiles, next to that horrible mouse costume. The terror in their eyes still haunts me. That's my soul died that night. Now, I can only wait for the mouse to finish the job. I've been on the run ever since, staying in cheap motels, moving around, hanging out in crowded places as much as possible. I need to get this story out before I'm found. The world has to know the truth, and I can't keep it up much longer. I know they're closing in. In fact, I see a mouse silhouette through the window blinds right now. That was very good. I really enjoyed that. Davey A is an excellent writer. Go check him out. He's pretty good. So, thank you guys for watching this all-new episode of FoxCast Creepypasta. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys next time.